Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and returning again with me for his second time is Lee Payton. Lee, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I just realized hopefully I'm not wearing the same shirt I did last time. So I apologize in advance for that. If everybody thinks I only own one piece of clothing. But yeah, it's great to be back. I think last time we spoke, I was here in Playa del Carmen. We were talking about some work things, and this time we're going to get into what it's like to be in Playa. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and if you guys have not seen Lee on the show already or heard his wonderful voice, check out the episode about how to get noticed as a freelancer. And like he said about Playa del Carmen, we have another show today about a nomad destination. Playa del Carmen has been a popular one for years now, but we're going to talk about what it's like now and what it was like before as well, with the casinos both sides. So, Lee, first of all, can you give us a really brief reminder of your background and how you started your digital nomad journey and how you got to Playa for the first time?
Sure. I was 43 now. So when I turned 40, I kind of sold everything. I had a corporate job in the Miami area and just wanted to get out and travel. I knew this is what I wanted to do to, become a digital nomad and travel, or at least work remotely, even if it didn't work out that I kept traveling. So I sold everything. I came over here to Playa del Carmen because it was kind of, honestly, it was kind of easy. It's a 3-hour flight from Florida. It was kind of the same weather. So it wasn't like super adventurous. So came here back then, like just spent 6 months digging into everything I could learn about copywriting and growing an online business. And yeah, that was a couple 2.5 years ago now. And things have changed quite a bit since then. But essentially, I have a full service marketing agency now, and I do a lot of fractional CMO work. So it went from just copywriting to a little bit of everything now. And yeah, things have been going pretty well, and I'm excited to circle back to where it all started and actually have a job while I'm here this time. So
Oh yeah, and I think it's so cool. We're going to talk about where you first started your nomad journey in Mexico, and then yeah, see how it's going now. So, okay, with Playa del Carmen, we're going to talk about a number of aspects about the city that make it a great place to work from. But let's start with arriving. So, how long can most people stay in Mexico and in Playa del Carmen without needing to leave the country for some reason? Is it possible to do any visa extensions or get a certain type of visa to stay a little longer?
well, my understanding is that we all get, when I say we all, as far as I know, every passport holder from all over the world gets 180 days visa on arrival. So the interesting thing about this is the first time I was here, I had to go through. You have to still go see the customs agent, and you have to kind of stand in line, and then you're kind of at their mercy because they would just write a number on there. So if you ask for 180 days, they would, there's horror stories where people say they wrote like 5, which I mean, maybe, who knows, but so that was a thing, like a little bit of anxiety landing. So it was a little not disorganized, but it was rough back then. This time around, I don't know when this was implemented, but this time around it landed. Got off the plane, went straight to this big automated booth. You scan your passport, and a ticket comes out, and it says you have 180 days from this day. So there's, no hassle, no stress there. So just the actual, like, physically landing at the airport was very nice this time. And you do get 180 days. I know you can extend because there are people here that have extended, and you just have to find a visa or immigration agent. There's a fee associated, of course, but I don't believe it's that hard to do. So yeah, the immigration has been very, very easy this time, even just for the 6 months that I've been here. And my understanding is that if you want to extend or stay longer, you have to jump through a couple of hoops, but it's definitely doable.
I'm so glad to hear that. And for those of you who are not aware, Mexico was famously one of the very few countries in the world that remained open for the entire pandemic. It was anyone could come in, but that is why I think they started just limiting days or making the days a very arbitrary number because so many people were
Yeah.
coming to escape all the regulations. So it's good to hear things have kind of normalized again for them. I mean, of course, with the pandemic no longer being a thing, hopefully ever again. But
Right.
I'm glad that it's been streamlined at the airport as well. So
Yeah.
when someone is planning to spend time in Playa del Carmen, is there anything they should make sure to bring with them in advance? And I guess I also mean here Mexico. Are there things that are hard to find once you arrive in Mexico or in Playa?
Yeah, so I'm laughing because the first time we came here a couple of years back, I wasn't sure what to expect. So I packed way too much stuff. I had duffel bags full of things, still do. But I think, and again, I don't know, maybe it was just my own stupid whatever I thought in my mind it was going to be like. And then we got here, and it's even more so now, but even a couple of years ago, I mean, there's shopping malls here, there's a Walmart here, there are clothing stores everywhere, everywhere from anything from the higher end things that you could find in like a larger city all the way down to just a cheap t-shirt shop. So to that end, there are some things supplement wise a little bit harder to get, although there is a GNC here. It's very expensive. But there's not been a single thing that I haven't been able to find here. And so, yeah, I would say like as far as what you need to bring with you, because the weather's warm, you don't need a lot of clothing, and just, you know, there are stores here. They even have an Amazon delivery here. I haven't tried it yet, but there is Amazon Mexico now, and I have some friends that have had a pretty good experience with it. So yeah, you can pack light, everything will be fine.
That's fantastic to hear. I've been to Mexico myself twice. I've been to Playa one time. I remember, and we may not go too deep into this, but I remember there are some drugs that are easier to find in Mexico in terms of prescription medication that in the US would need a prescription, but in Mexico, if you trust it, could be easier to procure there.
Yeah, no, the pharmacies sell just about everything here. Things that you're right, that would be prescription based. Arguably, there probably are some things in the US that shouldn't need a prescription and vice versa, but everything here is kind of a free for all. So the pharmacies have just about everything from steroids to Adderall to Xanax, whatever you want. So if you want to come down here and bulk up and get some sleep, you could do that. But you know, it's an option. It's expensive, but it's an option.
Good to know. Good to know. So it's also, I love when I hear I don't have to pack too much in advance, that I can find many things. So okay, I've come down, and then where do you think is the best place to look for accommodation when you stay longer term in Playa as a nomad? Should I try Airbnb, a guest house, some kind of co-living spot? Do you have any tips for where to find short to mid-term rentals as well there?
So I've had luck on both Airbnb and Facebook groups as far as finding accommodations. I've also there's been a couple of hiccups on either. So I'll start with Airbnb. Of course, Airbnb is, everybody knows about it. It's relatively safe. You have a lot of protections in place. It's also, for some reason, they tax it high here. I don't know why. There's like some, you know, like maybe the country imposes a tax on Airbnb. I'm not sure why, but a lot of times you'll check the monthly rate, and it'll be significantly higher, like a few hundred US dollars higher for whatever reason. And that's a newer thing, I think. So we tried that because it's like when you're coming somewhere new and you're here for long term, I just want the peace of mind. So I didn't mind paying a little bit more. Now we also got into some Facebook groups and were able to find a couple of nice places. Um, it's it's a little bit cheaper, but you do end up putting down a deposit, and then, you know, you don't always have the protections in place. So for example, the place we were in a couple parts of town here, place we were first at, without getting into too many details, we kind of had to fight to get our deposit back. I kind of figured that it was not going to be smooth. So there's that, you know, you have to understand that sometimes if you send money to a person and everything goes well during your stay, you may not get the deposit back, which is that happens everywhere in the world. So there's that. But as far as like location wise, last time we were here, we were down in Centro. And I think just from there all the way up to, you know, Calle 50, or the whole stretch of what was considered Playa, that most people know Playa proper, has just been wonderful. Every neighborhood now, I mean, even before, I didn't feel uncomfortable anywhere walking around. And I was kind of on, you know, high alert because I just left a investigative job where I was working in dangerous neighborhoods. So I was always cognizant of potential danger. And now I feel that it's just all neighborhoods are just a lot, you know, safer. They just have a better vibe now. So Airbnb, Facebook groups, and just kind of checking things out if you can. But there's a lot of photos, there's reviews, even the Facebook groups have reviews. So you're pretty safe so long as there's not like any major red flag or somebody's like is talking a lot of trash about a particular landlord. So.
I guess one nice thing about Playa is that if something does go wrong with your accommodation, it's such a tourist destination as well. You could stay in a hotel for a day or two looking for your next spot, like on the ground if you needed to.
Yeah, that's right. And there are a lot of new buildings here. I mean, some of it, somebody, you know, could make the argument like, we're tired of all the new condos and large buildings going up. I get that. There's just so many accommodations now. I mean, they're just on every corner, which is, you know, again, progress. But yeah, there's no shortage of places to stay.
That is really great to hear. Okay, you talking about all these new high rises and things, it's making me think about the price. So What is the price like now compared to when you were there 2 years ago?
To be quite honest with you, like, and then we stayed in the same neighborhoods. So again, a little bit up north, considered north, in the north side of Playa, and then down in Centro. The place we're at in Centro now is a large 2 bedroom, and I think it's 1,700 US dollars a month. Has a pool and everything. So for the money, it seems decent because the last time we were here, we had the same size place that I think was 1,500 US dollars. So, and then conversely, up on the north side, the two different places we had up there were almost the same price. So yeah, it is more expensive than last time in general, but it isn't some outrageous thing. Maybe a couple $100 here and there, which I know is a lot to some people, and it's like something to consider. But I haven't noticed any massive or major changes. There's a brand new grocery store here. There are things like the cost of living things that may be a little bit higher, but it's not. It hasn't gone up outrageous at all. So.
It sounds like compared to Florida, I'm sure, or if you're coming from the US, it's going to feel affordable. But if you're talking about maybe comparing it to Portugal or some place in Europe that's known for having cheaper prices, it might be seen as one of the more expensive or
Yeah.
getting more expensive nomad destinations.
Yeah, for sure. And then again, a lot of that comes with convenience. Like I'm at the Marriott right now, downtown. This is all brand new, by the way. And there's a there's a brand new grocery store underneath here. So before we'd have to go to all these little shops and maybe hit Walmart to find things that we needed. And now it's like there's a store downstairs that looks like any major grocery store anywhere else in the world. So it is a little bit more expensive, but then you can just walk down the street and you've got everything you need. So you're, trading kind of one thing for the other.
Yeah, it does sound like things are improving. Things are getting safer that
Yep.
you've noticed, and you're getting these new things coming in. So at least it's like your tax dollars are working for you. But luckily,
Yeah.
well, you're paying the US. Anyway, whole other
Yeah.
show. All right,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
good to hear there's a lot of improvements going on. So let's talk about the Wi-Fi for a few minutes. Like, have you noticed an improvement in the Wi-Fi? What is the internet connectivity like these days?
It's definitely better. There's Wi-Fi in almost every establishment, for good reason, because they want people to come in and spend more time there, of course. So every restaurant, cafe, the hotel lobby I'm in now, of course, it's all open and free. There were a couple of glitches here and there, but I also have a hotspot on my phone, which is connected to, towers, and I found that that's even a bit faster when I needed to. So yeah, no issues at all with the internet. The only time I ran into that is Cozumel is across the way from here. It's a ferry ride away. So going over there and going to a resort that didn't have anything, I was like, oh, that was the only experience I had in the area that I was like, there's no way to connect to anything. But Playa del Carmen, it's basically covered. Like you have a hard time finding a place where you can't log in and get something done. And all the speeds are fast enough to do what we're doing now. They're all fast enough for video conference calls. I haven't had any issues anywhere.
That is really great. And when you brought up your phone, are you using a Mexican SIM? And if so, how much data are you getting and how much does that generally cost a month?
So I got lucky because, well, I don't know if it's lucky. I have Verizon. It's very expensive, but I have the most expensive US carrier, and it covers Canada and Mexico. So I wish I could speak to that, but we're lucky down here that we don't have to change anything. But I think that they're pretty reasonable. My friends all have SIM cards, and it doesn't seem to be any more expensive than anywhere else.
I remember this was 2 years ago, maybe three. I know that there are carriers in Mexico that cover the US and Canada as well. So you can get your local, quote, local Mexican SIM. And I think I paid like $25 a month at that time for, I think it was around 5 to 10 gigs. So it wasn't a huge amount of data, but I was very happy to be able to go back to the US with a working SIM because for me, not living in the US, going to the US is like getting a SIM is a little bit tricky and expensive.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even know how to go. I know we had an app once. It's called eSIM or something like that, and we should link it somewhere. It was really cool, but you could load it up, and it was like an internal thing that you put on your phone. And we traveled to Spain and everywhere else. You go in and say, "This is where I'm going to be. I want 5 gigs." I didn't have to actually go buy a card, so that just came to mind as you mentioned that. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have to deal with that. And it's been 4G coverage, I guess, LTE coverage everywhere, which is not 5G, but it's still, last time we were here, it was mostly 3G. So it's improved significantly.
That is great to hear. Okay, now I want to talk about one of my favorite topics anywhere in the world, and it really interests the listeners, I think. Food. Okay, so what kind of options are there in Playa del Carmen? Do you have any favorite places that you would like to share with us?
Well, I wish I had a better answer because I pretty much just eat about anything. But yeah, there are quite a few new restaurants here, and there's a spread. You know, you can go find a taco cart, in the street somewhere that has better food than anywhere. And then of course down on Fifth, there's the fancy places that the tourists go to and everything else, like the big steakhouses and everything like that. As far as actual, you know, some of the best food we've had down here. There's a place called Zenzi Beach. It's one of the only places on the beach down here, down at I can't remember the cross street now, but there's very few. That's the thing with this place. There's very few places actually on the beach that aren't a hotel, and that place is open. So that's wonderful, great food and everything else. And aside from that, I spend most of my time in and out of cafes all day. So I'm pretty boring when it comes to food. I wish I had better recommendations, but I haven't had a bad meal. And whether it's been, from somewhere local, some small cart, like I said, or somewhere local, or one of the larger places, they got everything here now. There's like an excellent Indian food place here. I mean, so I guess what the trade-off is what kind of like any place that's going through a lot of progress, we're kind of getting more expensive, kind of getting more things, but then you come here and you're like, nah, there's so much to do here. I could stay here longer because there's more things to do and see versus going somewhere that only has like one type of food or only a few options. So you really do have everything here, and that goes for the shopping and for food. So just excellent all the way across the board. The meat's good. The sushi's good. Just an improvement, and I think it's gotten better since last time as well. I think the quality's gone up, and that could have been a product of coming out of COVID, but everything just feels fresher and there's more options.
That's fantastic. I know they also have quite a bit of vegetarian and vegan food as
They
well.
do.
And like you said, a big variety of cuisines. And we haven't talked about this yet, but basically, if you combine Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Tulum all together, there's very little that you're not going to be able to find, whether it's a lot of American chains or a lot of Mexican food plus other
Yeah.
cuisines.
They still have McDonald's here. There's Starbucks everywhere. There are a lot of vegan options, a lot of healthy options now, to include some stores. Those things are a little bit more expensive, but yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a day where I thought of like, hey, I want this that I couldn't find it, which is rare. I think when I leave the U.S., unless I go to a major city, it's not always the case where like, hey, I'm in the mood for like something like Indian food or whatever. Like it's not there are places I've been in Spain where I could only get one type of food the entire time I was there, which was amazing. But yeah, you don't have that problem here. There's tons of options. If you want, whether you want to go McDonald's and pig out, you can do that. If you want to be healthy the entire time, that's very doable as well.
That is really reassuring. I'm glad to hear there's like even more that's available now. Okay,
Yeah.
now the first time I went to Playa del Carmen, I remember distinctly that I could not call an Uber. They had plenty of taxis, but Uber
Yeah.
was, or Uber equivalents were non-existent. What is the situation
Yeah.
now?
I've heard that Uber is available some places in Mexico. I haven't seen any here, specifically. It doesn't mean they don't exist. I actually haven't tried my app doesn't connect here to that. I do know that the taxis are a little bit more organized now. And then what I would recommend for anybody who's coming down long term is in groups, you can find people that will, they have drivers, so to speak, that you can connect on WhatsApp, and they're very reliable and they come very highly recommended. So whenever we need to do any longer term trips or just go to the store, there's even a guy here. I should plug his information, but I don't have it right now. That will, he'll go to the store with you the first time you go. Then after that, once he knows what you're looking for, like he'll just go pick it up and bring it. And of course, there's a delivery service. So anyway, back to your Uber question. I'm not exactly sure what the status of that is, but the transportation seems to be a little bit easier here as well. And it's a very walkable city. Like it's very rare that we have to take an Uber or I'm sorry, a cab or some type of other transportation unless you're leaving the area completely. I mean, even from one end to the other is probably a 30-minute walk on Fifth, and it's a nice walk because you get to get out, people watch, and everything else, and check out the stores and everything. So yeah, it's walkable, and as far as I can tell, the cab situation's improved a lot more. You hear less complaints about that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, that was a concern for me the first time because I tried a taxi and the first time it didn't go well. The person didn't understand where I wanted to go, which is one reason I love rideshare apps because you don't have to explain in a foreign language where you're trying to go and you can see that they're going. But I remember when I was in Cancun the second time, there was an app called, I think it was called Didi, Didi, and that was a delivery app, but also I think you could call the taxi and at least it would call it for you and you could put in where you wanted to go, but you may have had to pay cash at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I know you'll hear so just like anything else with it's like anything else in Facebook groups, you hear horror stories and you hear horror stories about the cab drivers and you hear horror stories about the nightclubs and if you read into it a little bit, you'll see that like, oh, you were out till 4 in the morning. Well, of course. So but yeah, the public transportation here is phenomenal with the ADO bus. The cabs are, not all of them are great, I'm sure. And I'm sure if you get in, like you'll end up having to haggle the price a little bit. But yeah, it's really just seemed to come around. I mean, all the and maybe all the whiners left. I don't know, but it's just so much more pleasant this time around, and everything seems to be just more organized and just doing much better.
Okay, I do need to ask something that I'm sure some people may have heard about. I need to address it. How safe in general is Playa del
Mhm.
Carmen at the moment? Because I've read some horror stories on some newspapers about, people getting killed. People get at
Yeah.
usually it seems to be at a five-star hotel, like people are getting attacked, but it might be isolated. Have you felt anything or heard anything?
Well, this is an interesting question for me because I think I spent 16 years in the federal government and law enforcement. So this was kind of I was very in tune with crime and things like this. So just across the board with statistics and everything else and international things. So I can tell you that I think that it's very rare, it's very few and far between that you hear something like that. Usually it's drug related, meaning if there's a shooting, it's somebody was involved in something they shouldn't have been. And it's very isolated. I can say that, and this is a bad analogy, but my last few years living in major cities in the United States, there were shootings everywhere on a regular basis. So contrasting that to here, this is one of the safest places I've ever lived, and I've never felt unsafe. I don't want to start talking about the cartel, but whatever they've got going on in the background here, it seems to be isolated. It seems that I think you have to go looking for trouble here. I don't think I don't think you're in any danger. And again, I hate to I don't want to what I'm about to say hopefully doesn't cause anybody any whatever, but like you can see women out by themselves walking around at night. That's not to say that, guys can't get beat up too, but you know what I mean? It just feels safe. And I haven't heard about anybody dealing with any violence. I haven't heard about anybody being assaulted. It's just, you just don't hear about it anymore. And I've got quite a few friends here now. And we talk about, they live here full time and just that general vibe. They may put things on the news because they need something to talk about. They want to make a big deal out of it. But on those rare occasions that there's a shooting at a resort or shooting at a hotel or whatever, like that's very, very few and far between. And it's usually something that was much deeper than just here on vacation. Like those people were involved in something they shouldn't have been. So yeah, it's not a concern. And it hasn't, if it's going on around here, I certainly don't see it. And nobody I know that's here full time sees it and nobody's felt unsafe.
I mean, I'm sure we all experience living in cities and you read something in your local newspaper and it's horrific and
Yeah.
you have no idea that it happened because you're living your life in that same place and
Yeah.
people are having different things happen. But hopefully, I'm glad to hear that you feel it's safe, you have been safe. But I'm sure with this location, we needed to bring that up. So thank you for
Sure.
addressing that. Okay, now some of the
Yeah.
fun stuff. What can you do in Playa del Carmen? What are some of the activities? This is like hint, hint behind me, which is
Oh
I
yeah.
was told it was Playa. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
what are
Yeah.
some things you can do? What are some things that you have done while you've been there?
I mean, there's everything here now. There's everything from every beach activity you can think of. It's kind of has a little something for everyone. If you're a beach bum and you want to, kite surfing and all those things, surfing, kite surfing, all the water activities are here. You can rent boats, you can go fishing. Those are all available. For if you're into like health and fitness, and there are just classes everywhere and people putting on free things, and there are gyms everywhere now. They're building a new gym here. I forget the name of it, but The Rock owns it. Dwayne The Rock Johnson owns it. It's going in here. It's a massive new gym on top of the gyms that are already here. Yeah, I mean, there's like the festivals and the restaurants and the water sports and everything else. I'm a terrible commercial for what to do here. It's just it's wonderful. I mean, there's just so much to do. I mean, it's so close to what it was like for me to be in Fort Lauderdale that's hard for me to remember things. But there really is something for everyone. If you just want to come here and work, and just bounce around from cafe to cafe. I mean, I haven't had any issues there. Everybody's very welcoming. You see people on laptops everywhere. It's awesome. I think last time we spoke, we talked about how much I was working. So when you ask me about what there is to do for fun, I'm like, I don't know, just drink coffee all day and stare at my computer. But yeah, there's no shortage of tours, snorkel trips. You can hop in either jump on the bus or get a driver and go to Tulum for a day. We're not far from places like Bacalar. Cozumel's right across the water. It's a 40-minute ferry ride. I think that's right. And then Cancun's up the way. So it's kind of like a great centralized spot that's not as touristy as Cancun and not as overrun by, how do I say it? I'll say rich Americans as Tulum is. It's super expensive over there. And then Cancun's, over here with all the all-inclusive places, and then snorkeling and diving is over in Cozumel. So anyway, I'll shut up now, but I'm telling you, this is a perfect hub just to come do whatever you want. And the jungle's not that far and the ruins aren't that far either. So you can, in less than a couple of hours, you can be up at all the ruins and have just many different experiences being in one place if this was like your central hub. So.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite things when I went there was the cenotes as well, like taking a tour to see them. They're unique in this part of the world, like these big, well, some of them are big, some of them are small lakes, like fresh water in the middle of it. Almost, I guess, was it's almost like a bunch of asteroids were dropped there. There were all these craters formed at one point in history, and they've been left behind, and they're surrounded by some of them are still in jungle, and that's a great thing too.
Yeah, there's actually one here on Fifth in a restaurant. I forget the name of it. I'll have to look it
Really?
up. But you'd never know. You're walking by and you're on Fifth Avenue and people are trying to sell you things and like hey, do you want to buy these trinkets and everything else? Come check out my shop. And then in this restaurant, you go to the back and there's a cenote in the back of it, like a real one. Like, I have to look it up because I couldn't believe it when I saw it. But yeah, they're everywhere. They really are everywhere. And it's pretty awesome. And you can get on a collectivo or, like I said, jump in a van, and there's a few more right down the way. And some of them are touristy. You want to get there early because people want to go there and take their Instagram photos and everything else. But yeah, there's plenty to go around.
If you are an Instagrammer, you like being on Instagram, those are some of the best photos. So Cenote, cenote. Look it up if you haven't heard of it. Might actually just inspire you to come to Playa solely because of the cenotes.
I should mention one thing too before we wrap is we actually had to, and I have to mention this, everything's fine. We actually had to go to the emergency room here once, and I know this is important to a lot of people. And it was awesome. It was clean, safe. Doctors got us in right away. Probably in there for about an hour and a half total, in and out with prescriptions, everything that was needed. So that's remarkable because in the US you can go sit all day and spend thousands of dollars at an emergency room. So I just wanted to throw that in because some people probably wondering about the healthcare in the hospitals, and been wonderful here. They do take all the travel insurances, they take Cigna, they take Safety Wing. None of that's a problem. Those things get handled. So not to go from cenotes to the ER, but I didn't want to lose that thought because it is important, and especially depending upon your age and everything else. Like I'm in my 40s now, I'm more prone to run into things, or fall down. So, it's nice to know that if you're going to be somewhere long term, you have access to decent health care, and that goes for like just primary care all the way to the emergency departments. I mean, I was highly impressed with how just clean and organized and like efficient. You come in, what's the problem? Let's go check you out, and you're back out again. So that was very remarkable.
I can say the same when I had food poisoning in Mexico City. Starbucks and the hospital, I was like cured there, wasn't cured in the first country I had the food poisoning. I'm very impressed by the Mexican health insurance and the healthcare in general. And so, yeah, I think people should not be afraid about any of that when they're there. Thank you for bringing that up.
Right. Well,
My last
I'm
question for you, I think that it's a big one, is
sure.
like, how plugged in do you feel to the local community and also the expat community in Playa? Are there a lot of weekly events?
So that's a good question. It's things are getting more expat on the spectrum of things. Um, the local community, it depends what type of event it is. For example, like we try to do a couple of those. It's almost like everywhere that I go and everybody that I see, it's usually, expats, Canadians. It's I think it's because it's just the zones that we're in. So as far as events and things go like that, you do run into some local, you know, vendors and people that like kind of like work and operate in the area. But for the most part, most of the events are highly it's like expat related, um, and digital nomad related, of course. And there's a lot of those. Like there's like just like most other cities, there's an event on every corner. There's forums and there's Facebook groups and there's plenty going on as far as networking and everything like that. But it's definitely it's substantially more than last time. There's more going on. There's more connections to be made. It's been actually a very pleasant surprise. Like even just sitting at a coffee shop and you start like over time, you start overhearing the person next to you and what they do. And I've worked with a few people that I just met randomly here. So it's been very interesting in that regard. It feels more community. Everybody here has been just very, very pleasant, at least the people I've run into. So it just feels good this time. It's hard for me to like place exactly what it is. It feels like there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more sense of community. It's a lot safer. It's a lot cleaner, a lot more options, a lot more convenient. When I came here the first time, I thought, well, maybe someday I'll go back because it's a short flight from the US and easy in 180 days. This time around, I've definitely come back. Like it's a different experience. And I think, for all the reasons we talked about, it's just a much improved, even though it was great the first time. And I love it. I love everything about it. So,
Oh, I'm so glad that you're enjoying yourself there and that you would come back. I would like to come back there as well. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we go?
no, I appreciate it. Like, thanks for having me on again. Sorry for rambling too much for anybody who's watching this. You can watch it on 3 times speed if you need to. And wherever I go to next, I'll make sure I give you a shout and maybe we can hop back on again.
All right. Well, thank you. And if people want to follow you, if they haven't seen the first episode, where can they go?
I run a podcast also. It's called Solo Venture. It's at soloventure.co. We also have a new marketing agency called Big Click Energy, and we have a new email marketing agency named Mail Escorts. So we'll put links. It'll make sense when you see it. If it sounds stupid, it's because it is, but it works. So we'll make sure we link all that by the time this comes out.
I'm glad I asked, Lee. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, but yeah,
Well, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy Playa.
we'll do. Appreciate it.